Hey guys, this is Matt, the co-founder of the HMO platform, and today I got together with one of my friends and colleagues, Dan Jackson from Urbanshared, and we just wanted to have a chat about everything co-living. So Dan, do you want to talk a bit about yourself, who you are, a bit about Urbanshared?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. Nice to see you again. So Urbanshared is a company I set up in 2016, 2017 was when we got our first property. And our focus back then was really on what can we do to create a property business that's more than just a roof over the head. And at the time, no one was really talking about co-living, but I've always been quite interested in delivering a customer experience. I like to think of people, smiling when getting a product and service. And I think casting my mind back to when I was living in shared houses, they just existed. We just existed. It was bill splitting time was often an argument. You've used more of this than that, and all those sorts of things. So I was quite keen back then to set up something that was really focused on customer. And coming from a technology background, I knew that there was something that we could do. If you remember 3 years ago, mobile was a thing, and apps were definitely a thing, but they weren't as big a thing as they are now. And I felt that we could find a way of creating something on the mobile platform that could really enhance the customer experience and just generally the service that we could provide people living in these homes. So that was really where we set out and what my plan was then, and still remains today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think because our vision at the HMO platform is about co-living and bringing that to the forefront of people's minds, and you're actively out there doing it and creating it. And so what does co-living mean to you?
That is a good question. And I think it depends who you ask, you'll get a different answer. But to me, I think the simplest way of describing it is to think about an element of community. So what I mean by that is cast your mind back to perhaps a traditional HMO, maybe ones that you lived in, certainly ones that I lived in, whereby you didn't really know anybody. You'd move in and the rest was up to you. You didn't have any say in who might live there. There was very little opportunity to interact other than taking it upon yourself. And for me, co-living is about almost living as a household. If you could sort of look at it in its most simplistic form, it's living with mates, doing stuff with people you enjoy and that you like hanging out with, in an environment that's cool and that you call home. So that in its simplest form, and it can mean doing stuff together, whether it's planned or not. I mean, I've certainly seen in the last 6 weeks with the current sort of lockdown situation, some of the relationships within our houses evolved to the point where it feels like they are now living as a household. They've been forced for 6 or 7 weeks to live together. And some of the conversations I'm having with them now have made me realize that ironically, it's almost COVID has really pushed the co-living agenda, because they are living in great homes and getting on with people and doing stuff together. It's great.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think the COVID outbreak, the pandemic, has really focused people's minds on what's important in houses. I know we're seeing the same thing in our houses, where people have suddenly realised that they've got all the other people they're living with.
Yeah.
So before then, they could very easily just go and hide in their room and maybe not socialise so much. When you're locked in a property with 6 or 7 other people, then all of a sudden it actually makes sense to chat to them and to build a community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I think the other things that I've seen recently, I don't know about your properties, but we've got quite a lot of some ensuite properties, mostly ensuite, some without, and we're definitely seeing an increase in the requests for ensuites in the properties. Have you noticed anything like that on yours?
No, not an increase in the request for ensuites across our portfolio, because we are essentially a rent-to-rent operator across most of our portfolio. We are unable to control well, to a certain degree, the you know, the types of rooms that we can offer. So we probably have 10% of our rooms are en suites. So we've not seen an uptick in en suites, but I think making sure that the houses are provisioned correctly for the number of people is clearly super important. We have one property, for example, it's a 6-bed that has 2 en suites and then 2 additional bathrooms and then a shared toilet.
En suites.
Yeah, no, not really an increase from en suites. Like, I can totally understand where that would be coming from right now, but again, I think it's just important that the houses for us are provisioned correctly. One of our most popular properties, which has got, you know, a superb garden, has 1 en suite, 1 shared bathroom, and then a second toilet. And we've had some people express concern around 4 people sharing 1 bathroom, but because there's 2 toilets, that seems to work. Because you know, most people are never dying for a shower. They're you know, requesting the other thing. So that's something to bear in mind. I think the ensuite thing isn't as big an issue in some areas of the UK as other areas of the UK. That's just my take on where we're at with that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think in areas where you've got, you know, a much higher demand for rooms than the number of rooms available, then people don't necessarily expect the ensuite. The ensuite then becomes an optional extra. Whereas in other areas where maybe the ratio of people looking for rooms versus rooms available is less, so still in your favour as the investor, that people start to get the choice, because a lot of rooms are becoming ensuite, and so actually we expect an ensuite, and it's the ones that don't have the ensuites that then struggle to rent. But we have seen an increase in requests for them, so we rent actually really well. We've just rented another 2 rooms in the last week, so yeah, we're actually seeing a large uptake in the number of people coming forward. It's interesting.
I think you're right. Supply demand is clearly a big thing in that equation. My take on this whole question around what amenities do you need to provide, etc. Good quality properties in good locations with en suites or not en suites, if priced correctly, will find a housemate in good markets. It might be that the numbers that you're looking to achieve would change slightly dependent on, you know, those various factors. But I guess if anybody was watching this thinking, oh, they need to all be en suites, I don't think that's the case. You will obviously get less for a non-en suite, and we would always look to have a maximum of 3 people sharing a WC. And that just seems to work. There are a small percentage of people that will only move into en suites, and there are a small percentage of people that simply won't want to share a facility like that at all. There is a big sweet spot in the middle of people that are prepared to compromise in certain areas in order to live in good houses.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think on a rent-to-rent portfolio, obviously you're at the whim of the owner of the property as to how much they want to spend on it to get it to become co-living. As an investor, when you're purchasing and developing the properties, having more choice, would you go all en suite on a property, or would you again just look at the market and see what the market was telling you?
Yeah, I think I'd look at the market. I mean, based on what we know in Southwest London, en suites can provide an increased yield. That's probably similar nationwide, but they're not must-haves. So referring back to the property that I was talking about earlier, we have a 6-bed in Wimbledon that's 2 or 3 years old, so it's been built in the recent times. It's on 3 floors and it has 2 en suites, and then the other 4 bedrooms share superbly finished bathrooms, so that you'll have 2 people sharing 1 bathroom. one of them's got a standalone shower and a bath, and the other one's just got a standalone shower. That configuration works really well. What you have is, in that house, you have two people that have got en suite, so they're paying a little bit extra, and then you have four people sharing two bathrooms. They're paying a little bit less, but what they are getting is they're getting those facilities cleaned, because we don't clean en suites as part of our product. We clean shared bathrooms. So some people will sacrifice the privacy for the cleanliness.
For the cleaner.
Yeah, absolutely, and also it's slightly cheaper. But so you're covering off. You're able to. I mean, we could really jump into the detail around how we price strategically and how we move our prices around. But in a property that's got a selection of singles, doubles, and en suites, we're able to cover a budget of about £250 from top to bottom. So then you start to see an interesting level of inquiry and potentially an opportunity to upsell if the property really works. So you have people that perhaps are looking in a lower band, inquiring about the single room, but then see a double in a great property, and can afford to stretch that extra £50. Everybody that says my limit is 800 in London, they mean my limit is 900.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So I think there are pros and cons, but definitely having a selection of available products or rooms in a property that can attract and that can appeal to different budgets is a good thing.
No, I think you're right, because if you're selling, 20 lots of exactly the same thing, then for 20 of exactly the same person, where actually every person is different. Right. So I definitely agree, having a price range within a property always is a great thing, because of that ability to bring people in maybe at the attractive rent or the smallest room and then upsell them. So yeah, it's just something we do. Yeah. So you talked about en suites not necessarily being an essential for co-living. What would you say are the essential amenities and other things that you would say are critical for co-living?
Shared space, a good, well-proportioned shared space, and tenant selection. We have some properties as a rent-to-rent operator that doesn't have the type and size of shared space that we would like, but we have, through an element of kind of interviewing, have put people in there that are very like-minded. One property springs to mind in particular, where we had it was a two-bed flat that we repurposed into a three-bed flat. It had a good-sized kitchen area, but it wasn't as big as we'd have liked. It was the only way we could make it work. And we moved into that property, two single guys and a couple. So there was an attic room, and the couple took the attic room. It was one bathroom, so we broke that three person per convenience rule. But the logic there is that couples can share the bathroom if they need to. So every rule is there to kind of be tested. But when the property went back to the owner, those four people got a flat on their own together, because they'd become good friends, because they were all of the same age and working in the same industry, and they became great friends. They're still living together. So community, co-living, and those sorts of the sorts of things that we're trying to achieve, we achieved in a property that, if you read a book on co-living, wouldn't be part of the book. So there's shared space is the most important thing in terms of things that investors or operators like us can ensure we have. Tenant selection is really, really important. And then if we start to layer on some of the other things that I think are important, I think a very, very good, honest and open maintenance communication, so that we're in dialogue with these people on a regular basis. This is more about the customer experience side of things, but I do believe that's all part of the same agenda, which doesn't matter how many rooms or how much shared space you have is deliverable. We have a platform to do it, but it was deliverable via WhatsApp or by text message. But a good maintenance, a set of good maintenance procedures and good communications all add to the feeling, I think, of community and being in an environment that is moving towards co-living.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
What about yourself? I'm interested in terms of the stuff that you do with your investors.
So we are invested in about 5 different areas. And so we, instead of having a portfolio based in just one location where we've gone and been able to scale a really great co-living property and well, portfolio and manage it the way that we want, we've actually got portfolios based across the Northwest, Northeast, Midlands and the South Coast. And what we find is that we're working with different operators, different agents to manage those portfolios. Even though we've got some great agents, we've got some okay agents, we've sacked a few agents as well along the way, because service can be great for a period of time and then it can drop off dramatically. As I see it quite a lot with agencies, as they start off and they're quite good, they're small, they're manageable, the core team is excellent, and then over the long run they grow, they scale, and they don't manage to keep the level of service when they get with the team. So I think it comes down to building a great team to manage these properties. And I think for us, having a uniform level of service, I think, is something that we aspire to, whether that's through managing the agents or whether it's through working out how to manage multiple properties in multiple locations from a central base. It could be down on the south coast in Brighton, or could be in the North Pole. It doesn't really matter, because the actual management of a property can be done anywhere. It's just the on the ground stuff, the interactivity of a community manager potentially, rather than an agent, that would actually help to grow the portfolio in a way that we want it to go. In terms of dealing with working with our investors and growing properties, we build our own portfolios. We work with a lot of investor finance, so we do joint ventures as well, and which means that we have to do deals that work well, because we're working with people that we're working with investors. There has to be enough for us and the investor, so we're very conscious of maximizing properties to get the most out of them, to be able to maximize value and maximize turnover to feed all the parties involved. Whereas if you're doing this solely by yourself, you've got the capital, you're out there buying it, then actually you can be more selective with properties, maybe spend a bit more on properties. We've actually learned to be very, I suppose, quite lean in certain ways, to minimize overspend, minimize costs that we don't need to have. And also we've learned how to take a property and really get the most out of it, while still retaining that sense of community and co-living. So how we can take a 3-bed property, turn it into a 7-bed property, and that type of thing. So that's, I suppose, the skill set that we've built up is that investor developer mindset with the co-living at the end. That's what we're aiming for. And what I find fascinating, when we chat, is how you, as an operator that's on the ground dealing with you don't like the word tenant. What would you use instead?
I like housemate, or as we evolve, it could be member. I think it just creates a slightly different mentality when we talk about housemates. Let's use that term.
Yeah, housemates. I was going to say the whole landlord and tenant have got a lot of history behind their names, haven't they? Whereas if you want to become a member of this house, a member of this household, a member of this family, a member of this community, it has a different vibe, and that can definitely be dictated by the owner of the property. So if you're going to join this household, you're going to become a member. So in order to become a member of this household, you need to tick these boxes. So actually it helps to self-select people, because I know there'll be potential tenants or members that probably won't want that. So you get rid of those potential problems on day one. Self-selection.
But we definitely find that we've had some interesting viewings over the 3 years that we've been operating Urbanshared, and some that have clearly been, somebody is simply looking at this particular room as it being something that it's just their decision whether they're going to accept it or not. So
Yeah.
I remember one viewing in particular in a flat we had in Fulham that this young person was late turning up, didn't really apologise, parked the bike outside, very quick look in the room, put the head in the shared area and left without having any conversation, and then made an offer. And we turned them down because that for me is this isn't, we don't want to commoditize our rooms. We want them to be homes, and that viewing there was purely one way. There was no interaction. There was no sounded like a on the face of it a nice potential housemate, but there was no questions around who else lived there. There was no questions around nothing. It was simply, this is a commodity that maybe meet, proximity to tube station for me, boom, I'm taking it. And that mentality leads to a different customer experience for that person. I'm sure that they will find a great room in a great house, and I'm sure that they did, but that wasn't the sort of person that we feel could take our business in the direction that we wanted to take it. And that area of tenant selection is difficult. Let's not pretend that we've got some sort of perfect algorithm behind the scenes. We haven't. We try and find people that are of a similar age, a similar stage in their career, financially in a similar position, so that there's not that awkward, we're sharing a pizza and there's one person that can't afford to do that, because that can create some tensions. Yeah. And these are all attributes that we can measure in referencing, but nothing beats that feeling that we might have when we talk to somebody. And that's kind of what I know that there are some organisations like Urbanshared who talk about the interview process. We don't use that phrase because, again, I just think we need to be careful between exclusivity and creating something cool and vibrant that people want to be part of. So I don't use that term, but we speak to everybody on the phone, and we will agree based on that conversation that they would fit for the house. And one thing we also do is we add the person to our platform before they become a member of the house, and we see how they interact with the others. And
that's really clever. Yeah. And
often the interaction, almost always the interaction is a positive experience. Certainly now in this situation, we had a guy move into a property, actually he's moving in tomorrow, and he's in Birmingham, moving to London for work, hasn't been able to view the place. In this property, we have somebody who is slightly at higher risk due to a medical condition, and was somewhat nervous about the whole process of having a new housemate. So first thing we did is we didn't put anybody in that property whilst it was clear that the housing market was closed. A couple of weeks ago, when the steps towards fully reopening it were made, we started to kind of make sure that everybody was more comfortable with it, and we introduced this guy who loved the rooms, had done a virtual viewing. We introduced him to the group. He had a video chat with them. He was interacting on the platform, and everybody is now comfortable that this guy, first of all, will fit into the property, but secondly, most importantly right now, has been following the rules, and therefore isn't someone that could increase the risk in the property. And now that house is a community that they care about who lives with them, and they care about making sure that as best they can, they're part of the tenant housemate replacement process. You can edit that word tenant out. I'll just edit again. So edit out again. Intersperse the words. But that for me was a nice little microcosm of how I like it to work. This guy will get on with the housemates, and they will go and do stuff together. That was quite cool. It's quite a nice experience. I can't remember the question that you asked, but
I can't either. But let's not worry about that.
Yeah.
I got one last question, which is how do you see co-living evolving over the coming months and years?
Over the coming months, I think that the situation that we're in at the moment, once the word sharing is no longer the sort of almost a swear word, I think that the product that we provide as co-living shared house operators will increase in demand. And I think it will increase in demand because of a number of different things. One, we're clearly offering an affordable solution. And I think there obviously is going to be a downturn in the economic environment. That's a given. So we are offering a solution that will appeal to more. But most importantly, and is yet to be proven, I think the mental health agenda, and the ability to live and share a house with people that you like will become more apparent. I think, if you'd been in this process in the last couple of months, living in a studio without garden, I think it would have been much more difficult than living in a shared home. So I think, I don't know how we'll measure that or how big that will be, but I think the question was what will happen to shared living over the coming months and years. I think we're going to continue to see an upward trend in people wanting to do it. I'm hoping that we're going to see an improvement in the product, whether it be from the sort of, your side of the equation in terms of development of properties that are fit for purpose, but probably more so from my side in terms of the operational side, where operators aren't just traditional lettings agents charging an extortionate percentage and doing shared living when they're a single let expertise. So I think we'll see an improvement in both sides of the equation. I think we'll see an increased demand. I would say that, if I'm being honest, I'm a glass half empty guy, and what I've just said there is super positive across the board, because I really see that where we're at right now is really the start of what could be a significant increase in the demand for what we do and the quality of the product that we need to deliver. So it's quite exciting. I think it's an exciting time right now.
No, I agree 100% with that. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and I still believe that.
Well, it takes both types, right? It takes both types.
It does. You need two halves to fill a hole, to make a whole.
Exactly.
So definitely.
Exactly.
But cheers, Dan, for joining us. And for those of you watching, looking forward to seeing you in another video.
Thank you. Cheers. Good stuff.